Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Evolving Practice Podcast. I'm Dr. Sean Carey, and I'm with my co-host,
Dr. Bill Moss.
and we are so excited because we're interviewing Michelle Fisher today, who is an amazing body worker that I've gotten to know over the past 6 months or year. And we've had a lot of really good conversations about healing, about body work, about chiropractic and energy. And we want to dig into her story a little bit. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me today. So I am a massage therapist by trade, and I practice myofascial release and life activation practitioner and different healing energy modalities. And I love it. I love what I do. I love working with people and getting to hear everyone's story, seeing how their story and like their body relates. Myofascial release is really geared towards looking for the cause of what the symptoms are. And it's like kind of life, right? There's so many different cause and effects aspects, and it's so neat to see how life activation and energy work really affects our physical system. So it's neat to be able to tie it all together, like what's happening above and how is it coring and anchoring within ourselves.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge reflection. I was wondering if you could share your story a little bit about how you got into body work.
Yes. So I started out with being a nurse aide, and it was more of like hospice work and working with people with disabilities. And I absolutely loved it. I love working with people and, people that were in pain. It was end of life, but it was also people in their younger years. And it kind of had a little bit of finality. There's a little more of like a down to it. So I was trying to figure out different ways to work with people. I have my own body aches. I've always had right shoulder chronic pain. And so I had two friends that were massage therapists, and I dabbled, and the rest was history. I've been doing this for almost 14 years now, 13, 14 years. Wow. And it's been so neat to see how all this has transformed for me. I started out with deep tissue. Everyone loves to feel like that pressure, and like everyone wants to come in and have that like symptom relieved, and then it comes back, and that was what drew me towards myofascial release also. Working with more of like the ground substance, the collagen, the elastin of our tissue. And it's just so neat. It's neat to see how people are transforming themselves on the table.
What's kind of, for our listeners or anybody who's worked with a massage therapist, what are some of the distinct differences that make the specific type that you do unique to other? I know you just started to hint at it, but give us a little bit more of like the underlying benefits and also the details surrounding myofascial release.
So massage typically is going to involve lotion. There's different strokes and different pressures, more relaxing. Myofascial release in general is going to be working, especially like I said, with the ground substance, the elastin and collagen. So a lot of modalities, including massage, is going to really focus on the elastin and collagen effect of tissue. So what does that mean? It's the stuff that glues you together. It's the stickiness that will hinder our range of motion. And when we have pain symptoms, we get caught in areas. So myofascial release, I get to look at the whole system. I get to hear what your symptom is, and I'm looking for what causes it. And it's a little different with massage. Usually, there's variations, but a lot of people will focus on the symptom. That's like the main training that we get, focus on the symptom.
It's a little less pointing, like, oh, it hurts here, so just do it here, right?
Yeah. It allows it's really interesting.
Yeah, it allows you to like because we get that a lot as chiropractors, the cause or the pain that somebody's experiencing isn't necessarily coming from directly where they think it is, for sure. We're a little more complicated in that context. So it's always nice when techniques aren't so linear, like I hurt here, you press here, please take this away from me, right?
Yeah. And I love that aspect too, because it feels nice to have your symptom worked on, but then it just keeps coming back. And so it's like, okay, what's really getting to this? Why do I keep having my big toe on something and my shoulder keeps hurting? It's like, It's looking outside of the box essentially. And I get to really open people's minds in a different way, bring more awareness. Because massage, most people are either talking a lot or they just want to completely zone out. And myofascial release will bring it back into your system. There's a mind-body connection that we really have to get into to let go. The more you learn how to let go of control, the more you're going to have control. And it's a really fascinating concept because our bracing patterns, it makes us so stiff. And what's creating that? What's in our environment that's making us lock up a little bit? So I get to help bring awareness during touch. I'm evaluating through visualization, but I'm also feeling the texture of someone's tissues. So if I, for instance, I touch someone's shoulder, do they lock up? Do they freeze and move away from it? Or can they actually relax? So I'm really helping to intentionally trigger in a nice way and bring awareness to why are you reacting the way you do? What does your body try to tell you?
I imagine that has to be something you do verbally a lot too with people, because it's just such an unconscious pattern to want to disassociate from the pain that they don't even realize they're doing it.
Very much. Yeah, it's body awareness, and that's a cool part of how life activations tie into it, because we're bringing light to the issues. We're bringing awareness. And our body's dense, so when we have tightness, there's not a lot of light, there's not a lot of movement coming through. So it's interesting to be able to bring awareness in a different way.
Yeah, I think that word is pops up on the podcast so often, because I think a lot of times people view healing from a place of get rid of this for me, right? But all healing truly occurs when we're bringing awareness to a certain aspect, if that's neurological awareness, if that's physical awareness to a certain area, or just being able to see aspects of life differently. So it's always refreshing for us to hear, that is a consistent theme of true healing, is that word of awareness. It sounds like you started with this hospice care. Is that correct? Okay. And I've worked with one woman I just initiated. She actually works as a massage therapist in hospice care. That's where she's at. And I've met plenty of people who work. Did that experience kind of help guide you into some of the energetic healing world that you have today? Did it spark, from having that experience, spark the curiosity, or how'd that play a role in what you do now?
That's such a great question. When I was doing that, I was so not in the energy work. It didn't make sense to me. I was always fascinated by it. But I liked holding space for people. My clients would pass away, or they were coming near that time. And there was always just a comfort that I felt like I could bring people. And I never really thought of it at that point. That was almost 15, 20 years ago. And I was not thinking of it back then. I couldn't fathom what I'm doing now back then. It's really neat to see how far I've progressed. And
it's amazing.
Yeah,
it is.
I imagine you really had to help people be emotionally safe when they were going through, talk about something like dying and hospice care. It brings up all the fears and all the doubts and those things. So, what a great experience to have, to be able to just sit with people through the most difficult, uncomfortable things and hold that peace and connection.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You work through experiences too, and I have a lot of experience with death, but having older relatives and everything, that was a piece of it. But even just getting curious about how they're reacting and how can I comfort someone, that was a really big piece of what I like to do, because no one wants to see someone uncomfortable, no matter what it is. If you trip and fall, what's your first reaction? There's no blood, I can handle it. But otherwise, it's interesting. There's just I enjoy observing and reading and learning how I can help people.
Yeah, there's a sensitivity in beginning of life with children, right? The way we approach and kind of handle them with care and delicacy. And then we get gruff and let people kind of make their mistakes and beat themselves up, and then they need myofascial release. we care for them, and then on the way out there's this gentle aspect that I think allows us to tap into that sensitivity and that sensitive, caring nature that sometimes we neglect. And you're working with people, it's fascinating for me to hear you say, like, you go to put your hand on somebody and you learn so much from that response that they give. I noticed that too. Like, you ever tell a gentleman to like relax something, or put your arm in my hand and really relax it. A lot of times they just hold it straight in the air and don't actually relax it. So, over your years, from just all your experience, what have you learned about like the physical body, and how has it helped you be more intuitive about, what's going on with people? I'm just curious about what you've learned from that aspect.
It is so fascinating working with people. I've learned more about myself with this work because every person has a different way of learning. So you have to kind of like sculpt and use metaphors and like try to see how you can actually engage with people. Because just like you said, if you hold someone's arm up, instantly they want to help you. There's that level that a lot of people don't know how to have the passiveness occur, how to be helped. And that's been an interesting topic that keeps coming up too lately with my clients, because so many people kind of going back into like the control aspect and like letting your body not be braced so much. Because when I start to read people, right, like you just see it, what leg is coming out of balance. So if I start to roll it back in a little bit and see where people play with it, they tend to really stiffen and hold it in place. So there is a lot of verbiage that comes into play. It's interesting being a mother and watching, because a lot of kids will be oversensitive. It doesn't take much, even from infants. You can work on, I don't know how your experience is with adjusting kiddos, but it doesn't take much.
No.
Really easy.
They're really receptive, and sometimes the touch is too much. So there is that aspect of like just seeing like what direction they're going, what they need. And even with, as they start to get a little bit older, what do you like the tantrums mean, right? What do their words mean? That when they can't verbalize it, that's a big piece, because even what we want to say doesn't always come out correctly. So it's like, how do you interpret what someone's doing, what their body is telling me, essentially? And it's definitely an art because you have to relax. People feel when you're not relaxed. So when I work through my stuff on my own, people are going to start to really ease into it. So I'll learn, like, don't say relax, right? How else can you breathe into it? How do you bring your awareness to it? Did that answer?
Yeah, I love it. No, there's like so many concepts there that they're very relative. I had a chiropractor observing me today, and we were just talking about this. And we have so many different techniques in our profession. There's so many different technical ways to apply chiropractic to an individual, and we get in wars within the profession about what's better and what's not. And the reality is, the sloppiest version of it still justifies that it works and it can help people. And if it didn't, it wouldn't be utilized anymore at all, because someone in the public would have just been like, this doesn't work. So then it comes down to, like what you're saying, this other conversation that we're having that's beyond words with each other, and really tuning into that. And that, in my experience with technique and all that, matters so much more. Is that, I'm curious, what ended up leading you to, obviously you were in tune, you're working with people, you're having these unspoken conversations, and it kind of led you into going deeper with what went deeper? You wanted to go deeper with them or yourself? That kind of led you more.
That's a lot of why I've been drawn to all of this was self-healing. Even with body work, like coming into massage for the right shoulder pain, and understanding the body a lot differently, because most people, doctors aren't really teaching us this stuff, how to heal yourself. And that was a big component of it, because, there's medication that was offered to me, and, different things that just kind of like numbed it. And I wasn't looking to numb. I wanted to really find, how does our body actually self-correct? And so the more I dove into massage, I love massaging. I love feeling the deep tissue, but it kept coming back. And so there's that component of learning, how do you do it for yourself to teach it to other people? How do you gain that experience? How do you gain that wisdom in order to be able to offer something and be in service to other people in that way? And that was my biggest component. So doing the massage and the myofascial release took me to depths that I didn't even know were possible. It unlocks different levels of your memory. A lot of fascia is your memory. So every good thing you've been through, every hard thing you've been through, your body is truly holding the score. And so when we tense up, there's going to be a correlation of what's happening around you, or like a previous experience that we've had. So that ties into, when you release the tissue, you're able to actually free yourself from what has been holding you back. What resistance you've been having. And resistance is a really fascinating tool in life, I think, too, because we want to be in flow. We want to be able to have, easy situations and thought processes. But when you start to learn where your blocks are and face them, it's the same for the physical system. You're constantly having inputs and feeling information, but how do you do something with it? How do you get that energy to flow? Exercise is amazing for that. And there's strength, right? There's relaxing your system, but how do you strengthen your system? And that's another fun component I'll dive into a little bit after, but yoga is so powerful with that. I'm doing a myofascial release yoga class to learn how to empower through that aspect of things. And grounding, feeling your body, feeling what is off side to side, and being able to teach it to other people. So going back to like having your memories come up, it's interesting, because our physical systems oftentimes want to go so far. And that's why we resist things, because we feel so much input. And, if it was just easy to stop eating the chocolate cake, right? Or like whatever someone's vice is, like if you keep going towards something knowing that it's wrong, or maybe you don't even know, but bringing that awareness to yourself and stopping and trying to face it, that's been the biggest component with how I look at body work and energy healing, because our body's constantly asking for something. How do you listen to it? What is the pain telling you? What's it trying to guide you towards? Because if we keep, doing that repetitive motion and making that same choice, our body starts to hurt. It breaks down. And that's our pain receptors trying to say, like, hey, stop doing this. Or,
Michelle, where do you feel like most people get stuck with that? Like in terms of their own healing, or in terms of like not seeing, like, where do you find the blocks for your clients?
it ebbs and flows. Right now, there's a lot of people having trouble just leading with their heart. And it's fascinating how that will be a lot left-sided, how your legs move you forward. So people are coming in with ankle stuff or hip issues. And looking at the body from that respect, and then like left shoulder, is it a little bit more back or forward or like protective? There's been a lot of correlations that people are not leading with their heart, that creates a lot of pain symptoms on that side.
Yeah. We can see that really with posture too, right? It's like if somebody has that closed off heart, they'll have kind of that hunched posture. Yes. The shoulders roll forward, the upper back, it's what we would say in chiropractic, a hyperkyphosis. Yeah. But energetically, if you would to look at that, you're like, oh, that is kind of a closed down heart. But structurally, we know that it causes stretching of a lot of the different muscles, like the trapezius and the muscles in the neck, and it puts so much physical pressure on the structure that we can see that it, causes breakdown and arthritis and those things if it's there for a long time.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how it can correlate through that. And it's a good way to like bring it back into the muscle structure too, because
Yeah.
I mean, you know, where we move forward is going to like the weight of the world on our shoulders, or like when we have anxiety, like how does that affect your digestive system, or like truly adding to that hyperkyphosis. It's interesting.
Now I'm like, what's wrong with me? You know, I'm like
Well,
sitting here. I'm like, damn, what is wrong with what's going on in my body right now that I'm not paying attention to? Which it's a good thing to just actually slow down and do it. And you know, it's even when we talk about something like meditation, people don't actually, you know, people like to avoid that activity for the fact that they don't want to look at their thoughts, but actually also it does require you to kind of like pay attention to your actual physical body. When you sit in stillness and kind of receive some clarity and have awareness. And it's funny because you're talking about this and I'm like assessing, how was my day? What's my posture feel like? Where am I tight? Am I leading with my heart?
Well, it is so fascinating because our bodies will slow us down. And, you know, if we have a super busy day, we're not sleeping, we get worn down, and then we get a sickness. And it's like, it just, you know, even a cold, like it just makes you take time to stop and think of yourself. And, you know, maybe we still distract ourselves, but that's part of why I love the myofascial release, because the more you're distracted, you won't dive in, you won't heal as deeply. You take yourself as deep as you want to go.
So good. Yeah, it's really true. I mean, the slowing down is such a great win. And like if you really want a full meaningful life that is full of awareness and connection and intuition, it's like you really can't achieve it without what you're describing, like having physical body awareness. And a lot of people don't have that. And you know, that's what a kid is doing the first 7 years is like, they're like, oh my God, I'm in this physical body. And then it's like, we try to put these higher order tasks on top of them and they still can't like figure out their frame. Cause that's part of the biggest, you know, that's like part of the gifts of learning for the first bunch of years. So, I think it's good, like even this conversation of like the physical, there's a lot of spiritual nature in the physical. And vice versa, that this conversation is really helping kind of unwind. So I'm curious, the people that because you are in two worlds now, we touched upon it, you do the energy work now, and I'm sure you, as we do, have clients that engage in both avenues with you. And then you have some that are just maybe one or the other. Talk a little bit about what you've noticed in working with clients that are doing myofascial with you and then maybe receiving energetic healing work, life activations. And what's that been like working with it?
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because not everyone wants to see themselves. Right. And not being aware of everything, like it's good to shut it down a little bit and like be able to live too. And then working with people that are a little bit more into the energy work, or like just curious about the healing. It's really cool. It's really cool to see how wanting to be aware and shifting yourself. I mean, people can come in with a torsion in one hip and then they start to do some energy healings, you know, a rotation in the hip. And then a little bit later down the road, they have a little healing crisis. They might have like big events in life happen. And then they come in and see me and it's completely reversed, or they actually balance it out. And, you know, their legs are rotating the opposite way and coming into balance. And sometimes it's not even about fully finding your balance, but also just activating and learning how to do it a little bit differently, changing your perspective.
It's good.
That's what I notice the most about working with people that are more into the energy healing is it takes a lot to shift your perspective and just want to grow, change.
One thing that's always fascinated me with the healing is that I think so often it's just a moment in time. Like healing there's an aspect of healing to me where it's like we concentrate our awareness on whatever the thing is, like whatever that pain point is, whether it's physical or energetic. But like you bring enough awareness to that one thing and it's so intense, and then it's just gone. And when you were talking about the myofascial, I imagined you working with clients and it's like they're having this awareness and they're being forced to feel things in a way that they were before. They just kept being able to unconsciously block. And you're like, nope, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. And I think that energetically too, it really highlights that. Like when we open up those energy channels and we bring more positive energy into the system, if there's a disruption in the flow, in the healthy flow of the energy, like it really shows up in a different way.
Mm.
Sometimes I use an analogy for people where it's like if you have a car and you're driving the car 10 miles an hour, if there are some problems, you might not notice it. But if you drive that car 100 miles an hour, like you'll know, if something little is off, like it'll become very aware. And when you start pumping that energy through the system, you can really see, like, you're like, okay, this is what was just a little bit of a buzz before. Like now I'm realizing it's really interfering with my life.
It's neat to see runners and people who like even just walking, right? Because walking is low impact, but I notice when people try to get into running, it's like the body mechanics, like you're moving a lot faster, you have a lot more pounding and everything. And I'm sure even from the chiropractic point of view too, like you notice how the bones are shifting in different directions just from higher impact.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was a competitive distance runner for years back in the day. Then I end up working with a lot. And it's funny you say that because just in the last couple of weeks, I've drawn in like all these people that are like running and runners. And there's a distinct tone to people with that behavior, but there's also like a dynamic nature to them too. And I feel like that's what you were describing when you were saying, like, what's the difference between somebody who is interested in investing in their physical life and then also investing in their energetic life? And kind of Sean was pointing on to this is like, I feel like the term that jumps out to me is like they become a new level of dynamic where they don't get stuck so much. Like it's like that essence of now I've moved past it. And I think athletes understand that very much, like from like a primal perspective of like, I'm trying to not get injured or miss days of competition. So therefore, of course, I want to take care of my physical body. But with this energetic component, it's like, not only does that occur also, but it's like, you just keep getting through your stuff. And then you have new awareness of like the accomplishment, like kind of Sean was saying. So it sounds like a lot of what you see is this like increased intensity of the overcoming, which sometimes is like addicting, right?
It is. It's interesting to like notice what the energy body does. Like that was a really big component that I was missing beforehand, because there's so much that's happening around us that makes us choose and do what we do. And it's neat to be able to see, like running, for example, like what's driving you to run. I was doing distance running for a short time, and I was training for a half marathon, and I would get to mile 5. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Because you have to dig, you have to look for your reason why. And when you do, it's neat to see like how you start to shift your own energy, where you gain more power, you have to relax something.
Yeah. I think there's also this increased awareness that happens too, meaning that like, if you think of somebody starting or running, they're essentially trying to take their body movement from point A to point B. Right? And then if you add in some more levels of awareness, you're like, okay, well, this is what's happening with the foot strike, and this is how I'm lengthening the foot, and then another layer is like, and here's what I'm doing with my breath, how I'm pacing my breath through it, and then another layer is okay, and here's how I'm focusing my mind while I'm focusing my breath while I'm having the correct heel strike and foot strike, and there's something that can happen where it's like there's so often people live in this one-dimensional way, where it's just like, you go back to the running, it's just moving from point A to point B, versus there are these other components that we can have access to, where it's like fine tuning of it. You can just really skyrocket the results. And when I was in college, my one of my roommates was, he was like world bench press champion for his age and weight. And so he's
why didn't he influence you? What happened?
He did. That was a different life. But I was never able to like bench press like he was, for sure. But the nuances, like for like the lifting, there's like a certain of the gross lifting. Like so somebody starts working out and they're having a certain amount of progress with their bench pressing, right? But then there's this nuance that comes in. It's like, okay, now you got to squeeze your shoulder blades together and stabilize them. And then it's like you're squeezing your thighs to the bench, and that's activating your core. And then what you're doing with your breath. And it's all these things that the novice person would just never even consider. But it's those like extra dimensions that you bring in that can make a huge difference. And, it can make like skyrocket somebody so much in their development.
It's interesting. It's like a pendiculation aspect where like you need to feel that resistance. You need to feel something to let something go.
Yeah.
You know? That's something I noticed recently with one of my yoga practices too, is like I constantly get into a pose. I'm like, this feels really good. I can get to a certain depth, but like I'm not in the pose properly. And then when you add resistance, like a weight or a band or something, you instantly have something to pull yourself where you're supposed to and find your posture.
Yeah.
It's neat.
And the resistance can be something really great. And so often too, it's like that's where the breakthrough is for people. So when we talk about like myofascial, we talk about massage and chiropractic, it's like, okay, there are these points that aren't working well, but those points, it's by just like correcting those small imbalances, it can have such a mega ripple throughout the system that the whole rest of the system can light up properly, because so much energy is tied up into this one thing that's not properly working.
Yeah. Sean, I'm curious, when did you start to notice like your energy body in general? How did you start to incorporate that into your work?
I had a Kundalini awakening when I was like 30. And it wasn't that I incorporated into my work then, but it was something that was a struggle for me. Like it was like I was being really affected by my energy system. I didn't really realize what was happening, and I was having trouble managing it. So it felt more like a spiritual crisis to me. Before then, I was really interested in studying the greats of chiropractic, and I felt that they always had some spiritual component. They were able to be like super present, and they oftentimes it was like breath work, or they had these different practices that were helping them to have a high level of presence and focus. But then it was really my own kind of like spiritual crisis that led me to this work. And then I started this work, the light work, because it was like I was just getting so much healing from it. And then as I started to have more awareness and be able to like really regulate my own energy, it started becoming really, I was like, oh, this is like a superpower for me as a chiropractor. Because it's like, if I can stabilize my own energy, then it's very easy to stabilize somebody else's energy too. So like, then it's like I'm working on somebody, but my channels are open, and then I'm just helping open somebody else, and, you know, clear some gunk and help their system come into balance. Does that answer your question?
It did, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, because that kind of reminds me really of like getting into the modern mystery school, and diving into the energy work was having Sophie Davis Bain as my doula. So she coached me through a lot of the hardest moments of my adulthood, having a child, birthing and everything. And, you know, she was just asking the right questions and got my curiosity going. And I did Empower Thyself, and none of it made sense. I was just like, I don't know why I'm here. It feels right. And all of the word, like it just resonated though. And I love that self-empowerment. And I'm like, I always wanted to learn more about it. Like from that moment, I was just so curious. And it enlightened me a lot to the fact of like, you know, I joined this when I was a new mom. So I got to learn a different aspect of how having a child inside of you, like, what does that actually do for the baby? What are your emotions? How much space did I even have in my belly from my own tightness? Because even when our children are, for us in general, we are hearing everything when we're in utero. And that sculpts who we are in this earthly manner from this moment, because you're feeling everything. You're not intellectualizing anything. You're just a feeling little being. And that's a huge component to how we receive our information. Your body feels things first. Your heart receives information before, 5 seconds before your mind can make it logical. And from the get-go, like the way that we get to form ourselves because of how our mothers are, because of the input that we receive from them, it's going to affect how our posture is and affect how we make our decisions from a really young age. It's interesting. Like that is a really big part of how energy brought that awareness in, because I didn't realize I had certain blocks. You know, I'm feeling things from a density from body work, but we only want to feel so much. Then that's where resistance will stem in. And it was almost like light work, the energy work broke through that barrier that I didn't even have to intellectualize things. I didn't really have to feel it because it just cleared it from the system.
Yeah.
And of course that comes with struggles and, you know, life experiences that you have to face for learning purposes. But it was so fascinating to be able to just receive something and be able to see how it cleared something from my physical being. You know, it reduced the pains that I was sensing and the way that I was thinking of things. It balanced my emotions. So I actually got to see like, oh, when I'm feeling this certain emotion, it's affecting this part of my body. And sometimes I don't, you know, we don't want to feel it. We don't know how to tap into that physical being. And I love that it just takes that component away to a certain degree. It makes it easier, lighter.
I used to do like group and Sophic Reiki for a while. And one of the things that was like just fascinating for me in that process was with myself, where sometimes I'd be like flowing the Reiki for this group and I feel perfectly fine. And then 5 minutes into the Reiki, like some part of my body is hurting like crazy. And then it's, you know, I was like perfectly fine. It's not like I twisted anything or anything like that, but it was, the energy started flowing. And then half an hour later, like it was gone. Like whatever was in my physical body got cleared out. And it just always like it just always fascinated me how it could just come out of the blue and be like, you know, here's this thing that I wasn't aware of. Time to deal with it now. And what a gift that is, because it's like we can spend our whole life trying to run away from that. And you know, it's like people can go to chiropractic and they can go to massage consistently and religiously, but not address this thing that's behind the thing.
So good. Yeah.
So it's like, you know, it's like they have that recurring back pain, but they're not addressing that thing from the past that they need to let go of.
Yeah.
And you know, perhaps there's a link there.
Yeah. It's a great indicator of like when somebody just needs a different approach, right? Even if somebody works with us, like one single practitioner, for so many years, if they're just showing up with the same type of pattern and again and again and again, like that is time to be like, you know what, there's something else is needed. Something more is definitely needed, because that's like, we talk in many, you know, I'm sure you look and you comment on people's pattern and how it's changed, their actual physical structure. And I'm sure Sean does this too, is people start showing up with the exact same thing. And it's like, well, why do they keep doing that? Is it something about me, as the person working with them?
Sometimes.
Like, you know, yeah, sometimes it is, for sure. And I know the tools that you described, like with Empower Thyself and stuff, I think I get less of that, because right away it's like my state is always has become much more dynamic with the individuals that we work with. And we always have this level of protection and separation and objectivity that tends to not exist when you get too involved in your client's energy, right?
Yeah.
What type of clients are you noticing coming through for you right now?
What am I seeing right now? Like what's going up? Oh God, here we go. You know, that's a funny thing, because I was reflecting on that earlier. I'm getting a type of client right now. I'm definitely getting this runner archetype again, which I haven't seen for a while. I also am getting a lot of, I'm getting a trend where people actually are seeking performance more than their actual ailment. So they're justifying coming to see me as the solution to more of a bigger kind of a bigger thing. They're not just like, I want you to get rid of my pain. They're like, you know what? I look at my life and I want to express more of it in this way. So I think I'm getting a client of a higher mind right now. So that's coming up for me from what I'm starting to see in my practice. Because if it's always everyone has a right shoulder problem in a day, I'm like, what the heck is going on with everyone? You know, what's going on with my right shoulder? What's going on with my power? What's going, you know, but I'm not seeing that as much right now. I'm seeing a little bit more of a desire to utilize what I have to offer, to a degree that I'm more excited about. So I guess that would be a good sign if you're talking about what's going on, what feels good. No, it's everyone's big toe.
Well, it's neat to see as you work through your own stuff, you're not just attracting that one capacity. Like there is so much variety, and it's a neat thing to be a healer, a therapist in general, because it adds a different challenge because now you have to look outside the box in another way.
This is a cool question. I want to add one more thing. I think I'm also experiencing a client that has a high desire to be well and be better. So they're getting really good results right now. So my results are better because they're like coming with that expectation of more, and it's working out well. So that's good, because I'm sure you've probably seen where sometimes you feel like you're not moving somebody and they're stuck and we're not going anywhere. But I think right now that's not coming up for me, which is cool. So thanks for helping me see that.
Well, it's like they filter themselves out too a little bit. You know, sometimes the modality isn't necessarily what they're looking for or the approach that they want to do, but also, you know, when you want to heal, you're going to look for ways to heal. And I think that's a really neat thing. When you start to empower yourself and you're looking for your own ways, you gain a lot of that.
I've always admired my patients and clients who've tried a bunch of different things before they came into my office. You know, so like I just had this one guy who just started, and he had been to like 7 chiropractors. He had a chiropractor he really liked 20 years ago. And then there was he had been to like 7 chiropractors within the past few years.
Wow.
And but it was you know, and it can kind of set up some warning bells, because it's like, okay, maybe this person just is having some misunderstandings. But we did the workup, and then I kind of explained what was going on with him and why he was having that experience. But he was just like, he just kept looking, because he knew there was like, it was like, okay, like there's that thing for me that's out there that's going to help me, but I'm close to it. I'm just not quite there. And sometimes that's how it goes, I think, with a massage therapist or with you know, any type of healing practitioner, as you just got to hold out onto that hope and push a little bit longer.
What's your favorite way that you've experienced to work through things and heal? What's your favorite modality? Of course, chiropractic, but
for my own, well, I really love chiropractic in the sense that it gotten me through so many difficult experiences, and that there's an aspect of chiropractic where it's so much about balancing. Like you just you can balance the whole system so like quickly. I also really love acupuncture, and craniosacral. I tend to just like pass out and hit this like deep REM state that I really like, and it's so rejuvenating for me. The energy healing, I do love massage too. I also love water therapy, like where you're doing this. I go to this place in Rhode Island where you do like mineral pools and then cold plunges and steam room and sauna, and you cycle through it for like 2.5 hours.
Those are amazing.
And my body loves that. So I love that like contrast therapy too. But sometimes it kind of depends. It's like what's off with my system. Does it feel like do my organs kind of feel out of balance somehow? Like if so, I really like acupuncture for that. If I feel like a little neurologically out of balance, chiropractic is probably the best thing that helps me with that. If I feel emotionally stuck, I really like the water therapy or energy healing.
It's interesting, the different intensities too, right? Like trying to find where you need to meet yourself. I love the cold plunges because there's that aspect that like you really need to center, and you know, your body wants to almost go into like a fight or flight response.
Yeah.
And you have to reel it in. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a different type of meditation to center yourself.
I have so much trauma from that. Like when I was in
cold plunges.
Yeah, like, well, it's funny because they're so popular now, right?
Yeah.
But like 20 plus years ago, I was a competitive cross country and track runner in college, and it's like we jumped into an ice bath like multiple times a week after practice, and sometimes it was in the winter, and it was in northwestern Pennsylvania, and it was like Boston, and we'd get all this snow and ice, and then we'd walk from that up to the calf to eat, and I'm like, why would I want to do this again? Like, basically once my distance running career kind of dwindled after I graduated chiropractic school, I was like, I don't know if I've ever done one again. I did a polar plunge where I like ran into a lake for charity or something. But
it's a cool way to make your body contract too, though, right? Because
it is.
Even falling asleep at night, like if you squeeze your muscles and you tense everything, then like you dial it down like slowly, and then you can actually feel what you've been holding on to. And it's that thawing process, you know, like you're freezing, your body wants to shake a little bit, and it helps a vibration through your system to stop the bracing patterns too. It's neat.
I just went this past weekend. I think Tuesday or like so a week ago, I went and did the water therapy thing, and
Mm.
I felt like when I was doing some of the mineral pools and the steam room and sauna, like it would just bring these things to my awareness about different energies or just parts of my body that were just out of balance and needed some work. And then so it like bring all the stuff to surface, and the cold plunge was so intense that like it just takes so much of my breath and awareness that being in there for like 30 seconds, it would just whatever was there just got cleared. Like I needed to come to my awareness first, but then it was just so intense that intensity helped me clear whatever I need to shift.
How do you feel about the heat then? How does that affect your body, your systems?
I like the heat. Like I like heat in general. I like the energy of like fire. Like in the shamanic studies, the fire, and I like to have spicy food. I love coffee and caffeine, and but I can overdo heat for sure. Yeah, and then get out of balance that way. So I have to watch.
I'm a big fan of warmth now.
Yeah.
It's shifted. I mean, before it was like I never wore socks to sleep, and I didn't. Now it's like I'm like I love warmth. I love I have an infrared sauna. Like that's the way I like to experience the world. And I mean, I've done a lot of more research with warmth, and we have a doctor that's obsessed with warmth and development, and it does keep you out of this state of like fight or flight, and especially with kids, like they can't regulate and understand their temperature. So there's a lot to do with warmth and also the perception of people when they're warm. So I think I've become, and I like all the things Sean said, but even with that, right, when you're working with somebody, you probably notice like there is like a lack of life when people are too cold, or their systems kind of shut down. It's not dynamic. So temperature is, I use temperature in my chiropractic practice and thermography to even measure the performance of the nervous system. So it's I think, and most people tend to run warm too, based on that measurement too. So it's a fascinating thing. It's definitely important.
Yeah, it's
Michelle,
a comfort.
What's your favorite therapy?
Oh goodness. I honestly, I mirror a lot of what Sean said. I love hot yoga. I do a lot of that aspect because it's relaxing in its own right. Like there's so much that I have to concentrate through. I love massage. I love the myofascial release, but there's different aspects that I like to just shut the brain down a little bit differently, and meditation has been really good for that.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're having this conversation and I'm like, this one more than any has motivated me to like, I gotta move I just gotta move more of my physical body. I think sometimes in the winter you get a little more, stagnant. I'm not as motivated, but through this conversation, I'm like, wow, the physical motion of my body and what I'm storing and carrying like matters a lot. And even if that's like, I'm finding with what you've talked about today is like, not even outsourcing your movement, right? You don't have to do that. It's helpful during periods of time. But it's just the more we use our body physical, the more we can tune into the emotional aspects, the mental aspects, and the deeper levels of healing that we need. So it's kind of motivated me through this conversation to like use my body more to see what's going on and to also create some resistance and challenge. So I kind of thank you for that motivation.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a receptor. It's when you learn what your body wants, you can meet it where it's at. Different modalities are going to serve you. Heat serves you at a certain time, cold does. Try to figure out how to regulate.
That's great.
Yeah.
Michelle, if I could ask another question, what do you wish more people knew about healing?
That you are capable of healing yourself if you choose to. If you really choose to look at yourself and want to be able to adapt and really be who you are, you just have to take those steps forward. There's so much that our body is capable of doing, and when you start to look at yourself, you can free yourself and free your mind and live such a lighter life. I think that's my favorite part of healing in general, because there's just so many things that come at you, and when you learn how to work with it, through the healing aspect, you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's just a muscle that you develop.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great conversation. I mean, this has been very like just kind of leveling and recentering and balancing and challenging all at once. So, thanks for being on our podcast and as a guest. It's really a new aspect that we haven't really talked about at all. So I feel like this episode kind of stands alone as a very unique entity in the development of people's progress. So I thank you for being with us on our show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And finally, what's the best way for people and our listeners to get in touch with you, follow you, receive a session if they're local from you?
Yes, you can go to my website. It's www.atapia.org, and it has all the information to sign up for sessions and contact me.
Michelle, would you just spell that, the Atapia?
Yes, Atapia, Atapya, means being in the sunshine.
So www.atapia.org.
Yes. Yep.
And where are you located, Michelle?
I'm in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for the great conversations. It's certainly enlightening.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. What a fun time.